let's begin with the bipartisan tax bill that's been working its way, taking shape anyway on Capitol Hill. While everybody has been focusing on appropriations bills and shutdowns and that sort of thing, there has been some work beneath the surface on a tax bill, and it's actually taking shape in a bipartisan fashion. Passed the House Ways and Means Committee last week, I think, with a very strong bipartisan vote. So, what's in it? It seems like a rather unusual thing with bipartisan support. Rohit, could you give us an idea of what's in it and where things stand right now?
Yeah, so you're right. This is sort of below scope bipartisanship that's happening while a lot of above the waterline partisan fighting continues apace. There's sort of what I consider like two core features of this bill, and then some additional items that kind of got added on as it was making its way through the process. The core features are sort of temporarily delaying some tax increases that were enacted in the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, but had delayed effective dates. A couple of these provisions, one dealing with the way in which research expense is treated and the way in which the interest limitation rules apply, those kicked in January 1, 2022. And then a different provision that related to how much of a sort of a capital acquisition, like a plant, equipment, material, how much could be deducted immediately and how much had to be kind of spread out over the following years. That started to change at the beginning of 2023. So these three provisions all emanate from the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, all of which were done in 2017 with these delayed effective dates, with the idea that Congress is never really going to let these things happen. They're all sort of anti-growth, bad for investment, bad for jobs, bad for wages kind of policies. And surely to God, no future Congress is actually going to let this occur. Now, some of these provisions have been in effect for 2 years. So, we may still fix it, but clearly the 2017 Congress overstated a future Congress's anathema to these provisions. Paired with that is an expansion of the child tax credit. A fairly modest expansion as these things go, but House and Senate Democrats sort of middle of last year, actually middle of 2022, I take it back, it's been a while, middle of 2022, decided that, hey, Republicans, even though we Democrats support preventing these delayed tax increases from actually taking effect, because this was the product of a partisan, Republican-only 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, there should be a political price to pay for undoing your own damage. And that political price will be some expansion of the child tax credit. And it took about a year and a half, as it turns out, for Democrats and Republicans to agree, not on the TCJA provisions. That's actually been pretty consensus for a while now. But what would be the size of the child tax credit increase, the design features, things like that. So those two things are kind of at the core of it. And then things got picked up along the way. Modest expansion of the low-income housing tax credit to induce more private capital to help build affordable housing, as the credit's name would suggest. A similarly sized provision that deals with disaster tax relief for the various communities that have been struck by disaster, whether that's natural disasters, train derailments, fire, flood, hurricane, you name it, all of that stuff, which, cuts across party lines. Disasters do not know partisanship. Disasters just happen wherever they happen. And then all of this is paid for, nearly entirely paid for, basically rounding error money for the federal government paid for by changes to the employee retention tax credit, which is a COVID era program that continues to live on and has gotten much bigger and much more expensive than Congress initially thought it would be. And basically, the main driver here is, absent a change in law, people would have had until April 15th of 2025, so over a year from now, to amend returns and file and claim some value of the credit. And Congress is saying, you know what, this is a pandemic era program. If you made it to January of 2024, congratulations. You didn't need the credit to survive. And we're going to, say all claims have to be filed by January 30th, 2024. That date may slip depending on when the bill ultimately gets signed into law. But at the moment, they're saying January 30th, 2024 is the deadline for filing an amended return. And the official estimators on Capitol Hill suggest that making this change, cutting off amended returns a year and change earlier than would otherwise happen, saves upwards of $70 billion for the federal government over the ensuing decade.